Invisible Scars. Part 1. Beginnings and Passions. Avery Jackson found peace in her art. Her room, filled with the scent of acrylics and scattered with tubes of paint, was a haven where she could escape into her own world. When the pressures of school and the subtle, unspoken challenges of being one of the few black girls in a predominantly white school weighed heavily on her, she turned to her sketchbooks. In them, she created vivid scenes, portraits of people from her neighborhood, abstract expressions of emotions she struggled to put into words, and images of black resilience inspired by the stories her mother told her about their family. Her mother, Michelle, worked 2 jobs, one at a local diner during the day and another at a warehouse during the nights. Despite her exhaustion, Michelle always made time to admire Avery's work, offering quiet words of encouragement before heading out for her second shift. "Never let them make you small, baby. You're meant to be seen," she'd say, smoothing down Avery's braids and kissing her forehead. Avery's art was her way of processing the contradictions of her world, the beauty she saw in her culture, and the sharp edges of living in a community where she felt like an outsider. That feeling of being othered followed her to Edison High School. While she had friends like Jasmine, who had been with her since middle school, she couldn't ignore the way some of her classmates treated her differently. Little things, like teachers mispronouncing her name or classmates asking to touch her hair, left her feeling like a perpetual outsider. So when the art club at Edison High offered her the chance to design a mural for the back of the school building, Avery seized the opportunity. She poured her heart into the design. A young black girl standing in a sea of stars, reaching upwards toward a sky that swirled with colors and galaxies. To Avery, the mural was a symbol of hope, a message that despite being surrounded by darkness, there was always light to strive for. When the mural was unveiled, her pride was tangible. Some of her classmates praised her work, and even a few teachers shared words of admiration. Avery's Instagram, which she used to share her art, received an influx of followers and positive comments. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe that she could belong at Edison, that maybe she had found a way to be seen for who she truly was. Part 2. The Rise of Edison Fails. But just as Avery began to feel comfortable in her identity and creative expression, Tyler Griffin's Instagram page, Edison Fails, started gaining popularity. It began as a harmless space where Tyler posted memes about school life, jokes about the overcrowded hallways, complaints about cafeteria food, and occasional roasts of teachers. But as the page gained traction, it evolved into something meaner, targeting students directly with unflattering photos and hurtful comments. Avery initially found some of the posts funny, even joining in on a few laughs with Jasmine as they scrolled through during lunch. It was easy to brush off the jokes when they were directed at people she didn't know well. But when Tyler turned his attention to quieter students, like Brian, who struggled with his weight and was often bullied, Avery began to feel uneasy. One day, as she scrolled through the latest posts on Edison Fails, she stumbled upon a meme featuring Brian gasping for breath during a gym class run. The caption read, "When you try to run the mile, but the mile runs you. #try again." Brian's face, flushed and contorted with effort, was now a punchline for over 200 people. The next day, Avery noticed that Brian didn't show up to school. Rumors swirled that he was sick, but she suspected that he just couldn't face the schoolyard whispers. It left her with a gnawing feeling in her gut, but she never imagined that she could be the next target. Part 3. The First Post. Avery woke up one cold November morning to a barrage of notifications on her phone. Her heart quickened as she scrolled through dozens of Instagram tags and direct messages, each linking to a new post on Edison Fails. She opened the link, and her stomach dropped. There, on the screen, was a distorted image of her standing by her mural. Tyler had warped the colors of her artwork, making the vibrant hues look muddy and dull. Over the image, he'd written in bold text, "She thinks she's deep, but she's just dark. #art or trash." Avery's hand shook as she read through the comments. The mural looks like a cry for attention. I don't get it. Why is she so obsessed with being oppressed? Maybe she should paint herself invisible. LOL. What even is this? She could barely breathe as she stared at the flood of likes and comments, each one feeling like a knife to her chest. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them back, refusing to cry in the dim morning light. She reminded herself of her mother's words, about never letting people make her feel small, but at that moment, it felt impossible. The humiliation followed her to school. As she walked through the hallways, she noticed the snickering behind her back, the whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when she walked by. Even some of her classmates who had complimented her mural days before now looked at her with a mixture of pity and amusement, as if she was the subject of a joke that they were all in on. Avery felt the weight of their stares, their judgment, sinking deeper into her skin. When she sat down with Jasmine at lunch, her best friend immediately noticed her silence. "Avery, what's going on? You look like you haven't slept," Jasmine said, her brow furrowing with concern. Avery hesitated, her hands clenched tightly around her phone. She wanted to tell Jasmine everything, but the words caught in her throat. "It's nothing," she mumbled, forcing a smile that she knew didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired." Jasmine didn't push, but the concern lingered in her gaze, and Avery could feel the distance growing between them, like a widening chasm that she didn't know how to bridge. Part 4. The isolation deepens. The days that followed were some of the hardest of Avery's life. She deleted every post related to her art from her Instagram, leaving her page blank. It was painful to erase months of work and passion, but it hurt more to see her art twisted into a mockery. Her account, once a vibrant gallery of her progress and achievements, now felt like a hollow space, mirroring the emptiness she felt inside. Tyler's posts about her didn't stop. He took screenshots of her empty Instagram page and captioned them with snide remarks like, "Guess, she finally got the message." His followers piled on, each comment like a stone added to the weight Avery carried. The jokes about her mural turned into jokes about her appearance, about her hair, about the way she spoke up in class. Every new post made it harder for Avery to face her classmates, harder to pretend that she wasn't crumbling under the pressure. Avery started skipping classes, first just art class, then history, then entire days at a time. She'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind looping through the hurtful words she'd read online. Her mother tried to coax her out of her room, but Avery just mumbled excuses about headaches or needing to catch up on sleep. At night, she lay awake, wondering why she had ever believed that her art, or her voice, mattered. Jasmine grew increasingly worried, but Avery kept her at arm's length. How could she explain to her friend what it felt like to be reduced to a joke, to have her identity picked apart by people who barely knew her? Jasmine tried to offer comfort, sending texts late at night with memes or music recommendations, but the cheerful messages only made Avery feel more isolated. She wished she could explain how different it was for her, how the comments about her skin and her hair weren't just jokes but attacks on the core of who she was. Part 5. Seeking help. After weeks of trying to shoulder the burden alone, Avery found herself standing outside Mrs. Martinez's office one cold morning. Her hands were clenched into fists, her breath forming clouds in the chilly air. For a moment, she considered turning around, but she thought about the look in her mother's eyes when she'd found Avery crying over her torn-up sketches. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. She knocked on the door, and Mrs. Martinez's warm voice called her in. As Avery sat down, the counselor's expression softened. "Avery, it's good to see you, but I'm worried. You haven't been yourself lately." Avery swallowed hard, feeling the words bubbling up in her throat. I'm being targeted online. There's this page and they keep posting about me, about my art, my hair, my skin. And it's not just online. People at school, they won't stop talking about it." For a moment, Avery's voice broke, and she blinked back tears. Mrs. Martinez leaned forward, her expression turning serious. "Avery, what you're experiencing isn't just teasing. It's harassment, and it's not okay. You deserve to feel safe at school. Have you spoken to anyone else about this?" Avery shook her head. "I don't know if it will help. I don't want to be seen as the girl who can't take a joke. But it's not a joke to me. It feels like they're tearing me apart, piece by piece." Mrs. Martinez's face softened even more. "You did the right thing by coming to me. I'm going to talk to Mr. Dawes about this, and we'll work together to make sure you're supported." "You're not alone in this, Avery." Despite the warmth in Mrs. Martinez's words, Avery couldn't shake the fear that clung to her chest. Would speaking up really make a difference, or would it just paint a bigger target on her back? Part 6. Unfolding Consequences. When Mrs. Martinez brought the issue to Mr. Dawes, the principal, he listened with a furrowed brow, his hands steepled in thought. He promised to look into the situation, but his attempts at addressing the problem felt inadequate. Tyler was called into the office, and the page was taken down for a time, but the damage had already been done. The whispers continued, the sideways glances in the halls remained, and Avery still felt the weight of isolation pressing down on her. At home, Avery's mother tried to support her as best she could. She even reached out to local community organizations, looking for ways to address cyberbullying. But the school's response felt like too little, too late. Avery withdrew further, shutting out even Jasmine, who struggled to understand why her friend was growing so distant. For every step forward, Avery felt like she was being pulled 2 steps back. She spent nights awake, scrolling through old photos of her artwork, wondering if she would ever feel proud of her creations again. Wondering if she could ever reclaim the voice she had lost amidst the noise of other people's laughter. Part 7. The Turning Point. It wasn't until months later, after the relentless winter had given way to spring, that Avery found a way to begin healing through a surprising and quiet act of defiance. She went back to the mural she had painted, standing in front of it in the evening light. She pulled out a brush and some fresh paints and started adding new details to the girl in the mural, painting stars around her, filling the sky with new colors. It was her way of reclaiming her art, of taking back the story she'd allowed others to steal from her. People would still talk, and she knew that the scars of what she'd endured wouldn't fade easily. But as she added more layers to the mural, she found a part of herself that was ready to fight back, ready to be seen again, not on anyone else's terms, but on her own. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe.